expect cases to peak in a few weeks' time before they start to come down. And when this happens, we can then further ease our measures and resume our journey towards living with COVID-19.
The message today from Singapore's COVID-19 task force: with Omicron still a threat, it's not time yet to ease restrictions. More than 21,000 people are no longer considered fully vaccinated after failing to get their booster shot in time. And victims in Singapore lost more than $633 million to scams last year, a record high. You're watching The Big Story. I'm Olivia Quay. You can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you don't miss a single episode. Singapore is now in the middle of the Omicron wave, and 20,000 new cases a day is well within expectations. Thankfully, the large majority of patients continue to have mild or no symptoms. In a press conference this afternoon, the COVID-19 task force ministers reassuring Singaporeans that there's no reason to panic. In fact, in the coming weeks, daily infection numbers may rise even further before peaking and may remain high for some time before coming down. What this means is our current restrictions will continue for now.
Today is not the time to announce any easing of restrictions. It is, however, an important juncture to review in depth our current rules, and we have done so. This is because if Singapore is like many other countries that have gone through or are going through the Omicron wave, in a few weeks, cases will come down, perhaps even quite dramatically. And then we will be in a position to ease travel rules as well as our domestic safe management measures, or SMMs. We have therefore reviewed our rules to further adapt to the characteristic of Omicron variant. And at the same time, with this in-depth review of our rules, we will streamline and rationalize them. And these rules have accumulated over the past 2 years and have become quite unwieldy, actually. And by streamlining them, we can adopt a posture that will better enable us to open up when the timing is right.
While our measures remain in place, they will be simplified with a focus on what the Health Ministry says are the 5 core parameters. First, group sizes. From February the 25th, the maximum number of unique visitors per household will be adjusted from 5 persons per day to 5 at any one time. Next, safe distancing. It's encouraged but will not be required in all mask-on settings. It continues to be required for all mask-off settings, which will be a single safe distance of 1 meter. Before we get to the other 3, let's first hear from Minister Ong.
We no longer forbid practices that actually do not make a material difference to the pandemic, but which we are observing very strictly. For example, so long as people are wearing masks, there's no need to cross out alternate seats in park benches, for example, or the urinals in a men's toilet. And the men will know sometimes they are actually crossed out, alternate ones are crossed out, which is not necessary so long as you're wearing a mask. Or when people wear their mask and they stand together and take a photo, they don't have to be a meter apart. Yeah. So I think all these little things really don't matter anymore, and we can do away with them.
Back to the 5 parameters. Thirdly, workplace requirements will be aligned with community measures. For instance, social gatherings at workplaces will be allowed again with up to 5 people, and colleagues will not need to socially distance as long as they wear masks. Moving on to capacity limits. From March the 4th, specific event size limits and zoning requirements will be lifted for events with fewer than 1,000 people, like religious services, business events, media conferences, funerals, wedding receptions, and mask-on classes. For larger settings with over 1,000 people, like attractions, cruises, MICE events, and shopping malls, these would be subject to a capacity limit of 50%. And lastly, mask wearing. Well, no change there. It continues to be required as a default.
We think it will be easier for everyone to remember and understand the rationale for these MMMs, and so comply with them and adjust to a new phase of having to live with the virus. Second, having these key parameters will enable us to adjust the SMMs more nimbly and responsively. So if we were to ease in the coming weeks, we can ease along these 5 parameters. And if ever there is a need to tighten because of the threat of a new deadly variant, we will also be able to tighten along these 5 parameters.
The task force also announcing changes to health protocols 2 and 3. In the case of protocol 2, for those who are well and tested positive or have been assessed by a doctor to have a mild condition, from today all patients that fall into the 2 groups here can be managed by their primary care doctors. Those falling outside of these age brackets will continue to be managed by MOH, either through the home recovery program or at a care facility or hospital. Meanwhile, from this Friday, 2 key changes will be introduced to Protocol 3. First, a new health risk notice will replace the current health risk warning for close contacts identified by MOH. Those issued with an HRN can continue to obtain their ART test kits through designated vending machines to facilitate their self-testing during the monitoring period. Second, the recommended self-monitoring period will be reduced from the current 7 days to 5 days. That said, those who have already received HRWs should still complete their existing monitoring periods.
Health protocols. We must remember almost everything about Omicron variant is faster than all previous variants. So for example, Omicron patients recover faster, which is why we shortened the discharge period earlier. Omicron also has a shorter incubation duration and an earlier infectious window. You put that together, the result is that it has a very short serial interval. What is a serial interval? This refers to the time taken between a first person infected and experiencing symptoms and the next person that the first person infected to be also getting symptoms. That is called the serial interval. Based on our studies, the serial interval for Delta is about 2 days. The serial interval for Delta is about 4 days. The serial interval for Omicron is as short as 2 days. So our health protocols need to adapt to this distinct characteristic of Omicron, of having very short serial interval.
Singapore will be launching the first vaccinated travel lane arrangement via sea from Batam and Bintan. Fully vaccinated travellers from both Indonesian islands may enter Singapore from next Friday, February 25th, without the need for quarantine. And this mirrors what Indonesia already allows for vaccinated Singapore travellers.
To facilitate bi-directional quarantine-free travel, we will launch our first VTL-C with Bintan and Batam. Similar to VTL Air, vaccinated travellers from both islands will be able to enter Singapore and will not be subject to a stay-home notice. We will commence with a weekly quota of 700 travellers, 350 each from Bintan and Batam. We will start the VTP applications for VTL-C on the 22nd of February and commence the VTL-C from Bintan and Batam from the 25th of February.
Visit straitstimes.com for more on today's announcements, and we'll have an expert opinion on the latest changes on tomorrow's show as well. Moving on, about 21,800 people 18 years old and up had their COVID-19 vaccination status lapse on Monday as they had not taken their booster shots. Well, this means they'll not be allowed in settings with vaccination differentiated measures like dining in at restaurants or going to shopping malls. The Health Ministry told the Straits Times yesterday that these people had yet to make appointments as at Sunday, even though they're eligible and had taken their second primary jab over 270 days ago. MOH has said that those who have received their booster dose will have their vaccination status updated within 24 hours of the jab. According to the police's crime figures released today, last year, victims in Singapore lost at least $633.3 million to scams. That's the highest on record and almost 2.5 times higher compared with 2020. Job scams topped the 10 most prevalent types of scams in 2021 with around 4,550 cases, a jump from just 132 in 2020. Investment scams were the fourth most common type of scam reported, but these scams accounted for the most amount of money stolen, with victims losing $190.9 million in total. Correspondent David Sun is here with more. David, let's talk about job scams first. You know, they were last year's most prevalent type of scam, and they weren't even among the top 10 scams the year before. So what factors accounted for the massive rise in job scams?
So, with the pandemic onset and everything, there have been a lot of people who have been losing their jobs because of COVID-19 and the disruptions that it's causing. And so a lot of people want to find ways to supplement their income or even, find new jobs. And so when an opportunity just like happens to fall into your lap or comes around in the form of a message or SMS, I think there are people who are desperate, who really need the money and who need jobs, who are just going to click on links, who are going to like try to do something that they've never done before, like download an app from a particular website that promises, you can get jobs through this, you can earn money through this, only if, deposits a bit of money first so you can get access to these jobs.
I see. Well, David, the police says at least 90% of scams here originate from overseas. Do local authorities have sight on these scams that operate overseas but target Singapore? And if so, can they do anything to stem these scams?
I think it's a very difficult situation of cat and mouse, whereby, these scammers are overseas and our Singaporean authorities are stuck here. They have to deal with external jurisdictions to try and go after these scam syndicates, which have a lot of technologies, spoofing technologies, masking technologies, making it very difficult to find them. And while we do have sight of them, and we do understand, roughly how they work, what the new variants are that are coming up, how they operate, it's very difficult to prosecute them, to kind of like, bring them to justice. So really, at the end of the day, the most you can do is, tell Singaporeans, like, look, there are these syndicates out there, they are overseas. It's very difficult to get your money once it's transferred overseas to these scammers. So please be vigilant. Please look after yourselves and take care of your loved ones and family members.
Right. So, all of us have a sort of personal responsibility to make sure that, we don't fall victim to any sort of scam. But how are scams evolving to become more sophisticated, that even it can catch the most aware of us?
I think scams, the way scams work is that they evolve over time to adapt to, more safeguards that we put up. So, and this is aided also, with advanced technologies that the scammers have found access to, things like spoofing technologies, masking technologies. I think it's very easy to socially engineer something that makes people believe that this is not a scam, or rather, there's two ways to go about it. Either you lure them with something that they really, really want, or you put fear in them, or you use both actually, and it works both ways. So, for example, in the recent job scams and all that, the variants, while it was previously like, okay, there's this scam, you download this app and then you lose money to it, and then you try to get out of it, you try to get out of the scam. What the scammers have done is that they've taken it a step further. By now, if you try to escape or run away, they'll issue you this fake legal letter kind of thing with letterheads from the authorities. But actually, these letterheads are not real. They're not actually from the authorities. And a lot of people do fall for these kind of scams. So, scammers they're not static. They continually evolve. They kind of understand. They even read our anti-crime messages and then try to evolve and adapt to all of this. So it's not easy, to really try to keep up with them all the time.
Well, while all that is happening, do you think people are becoming more wary of scams these days, especially after what happened with the OCBC phishing scam?
I hope, my personal hope is that more people are aware of scams at least. You know, and it's very important, you know, that we have safeguards in place, not just in the institutions, but amongst our friends and family and ourselves, that we kind of take this like responsibility to look after our friends and family and also talk to them about scams, especially the older ones, to prevent them from falling victim. I mean, a lot of people have lost their hard-earned money, you know, in this OCBC phishing scam and all that. But you know, it's just one type of scam, and there's so many different types of scams out there that we still need to look out for. And you know, I feel bad for the people who have lost their money, but we need to keep this conversation going so that others don't lose their money also.
Right, David, thanks so much. David Sun there, correspondent for the Straits Times. ST has launched a Stop Scams campaign to create awareness and alert people to how they can protect themselves. You'll find stories and videos at str.sg/stopscams. In other news, OCBC Bank now has a so-called kill switch, which allows customers to immediately freeze all their accounts in case of an emergency, like when they suspect they've been scammed. The function can be activated by choosing option 8 via the bank's official contact number or at standalone OCBC ATMs. After this switch is activated, no transactions, whether digitally, via an ATM or at bank branches, can be made. Recurring or pre-arranged transfers will be disabled as well. Singapore Airlines has finalized an order for 7 new Airbus A350F freighter aircraft and will be the first carrier in the world to fly them. The companies didn't provide a value for the order, but which was signed at the Singapore Air Show. SIA is the largest operator of the A350 long-range passenger jet, with 58 currently in service. 19 dogs have been taken into care by the Animal and Veterinary Service after it received a tip-off about an unlicensed dog breeder. A woman and her husband are assisting with investigations. For keeping animals in captivity for sale without license, offenders can be fined up to $5,000, jailed for up to 6 months, or both. Visit straitstimes.com for more news and our YouTube channel for more videos. Subscribe by hitting the red button below. I'm Olivia Quay. Thanks for watching The Big Story and see you tomorrow.